Welcome back to the IE427 garage, everybody. Today we're working on Jim's car. We're going to be installing the Breeze front mount battery box and figuring out all the configuration for our battery cables. So stay tuned. T-Rex, get it on. Okay, I'm working on the battery box. We're using the Breeze engine mount battery box, and it can be installed once the car's finished. It ain't easy, but it can be done. So what I'm working on is getting that box in. Right now I've got it held in with a couple of Clecos, and I'll show you those Clecos I got. Doing it a little bit different than the way Mark has the instructions outlined, because I've got stuff in the way. Waiting on an oil pan, so I will say that not having the oil pan in place has been a godsend, because I can actually see over the top of the 4-inch round tube here. But you could do it from the wheel well. You can pull out the rear splash shield and you could look in that way. I've got not rib nuts. I've got 3 Clecos in there holding it. Let's see if I can get this light up in there a little bit. It's not working. So 1, 2, 3, and that's into the round tube that makes up the cross brace there. And then what I did is I took my level. I'll get this light back in place. I took my level, I put it on the bottom of the box, I made sure it was level, that way. Then I came over here, I leveled it this way, and you can see it's high in the back, facing the back of the car. So what I did is I reached up on top and I pushed it down until that bubble on there read level. And then I went from the inside of the box and I marked with a silver marker 2 holes. Or 4 2 holes, and those 2 holes are going to go through the box into the 4-inch round tube right here, and they're going to be drilled with a number 7 drill bit, and then they're going to be tapped with a 1/4-20 tap. And in Mark's kit, he supplies 2 button head screws to go in and hold that in there. I will take that all apart once I get those holes marked. And then I will tap and drill, or drill and tap. And then I'll put those in first when I go for reassembly. So those drilled and tapped holes are going to be what I install first, and then I will push up on the battery box in order to line up my 3 holes that get pop rivets into that, round tube. I've got a bunch of stuff in here. He's got these marked backwards. I don't know why. These 2 bolts, it says tray to cross member. I guess that's right. It is, but it's going to a 4-inch round tube. But on this one, he's got tray to 4-inch round tube. I think Mark just made a mistake. He just marked them backwards. And he does give you a couple extra rivets. These are stainless steel. And all this stuff is stainless steel. So we're going to go ahead. I'm going to pull that box out of there. I'm going to drill and tap for these machine screws. And then I'm going to go ahead and put these in first. All right, music update. Foreigner, urgent. Oh, I just had the back door of the shop open. And, you know, we only get a couple of good months each year to like have the garage doors or the shop doors open where it's nice and cool outside, but it's not cold. Well, cold enough that you need to wear a sweater or anything. And each time I've opened the door the last couple of evenings, somebody's been outside, either a gardener or somebody with one of those damn leaf blowers, and it's driving me nuts. All right, so I got the battery box itself all installed. I've got the 1/4-20 bolts or machine screws into the frame with Loctite, lock washers, all that kind of stuff. and I've got the 3 rivets that go in the cross brace. So let's see if I can sneak the camera up in there and show you guys what's going on up there. So there are the 3 pop rivets in there, and then you can see the box is in. I did have to move one of the brake lines up a little bit, and then let's see, you can see down there. So there's one of the bolts. Let's see if we can catch the other one right there. So I've got those in, and you can see my brake lines are just on top of that, and my fuel line's just on top of the brake line. So I wanted to get that strapped in place before I got the box mounted too. So that portion of it's done. Now what I'm going to do next, and it's probably going to be tomorrow after I visit with Jim, if you guys see this little hole, let's see if I can shine the light in from the other side so you can see it. See that hole right there? Factory 5 puts that in the engine mount so you can ground the engine to the chassis. And see what somebody did here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill that hole out to 3/8. I'm going to clean up the paint here on the back side of the engine mount. I'm going to weld the bolt into the frame, and then I'll have a stud facing out this way that I can take all the engine grounds. I'm going to get rid of that braided cable for the actual cable that Mark sent along with his battery kit. So Mark sends you all of these cables. So this one is for the engine to chassis ground. I'm going to use that. And this one is for the battery to the chassis ground. And then we're going to reutilize the cable that we pulled out, which I think I've got over on the bench, for the positive, and we're just going to shorten it so that it goes from the battery in the front, and there is a solenoid mounted on the firewall of this car. It doesn't need it because there's a solenoid on the battery, but I'm not going to get into that wiring. It's working now, so I'm just going to leave well enough alone. If at some point in the future it becomes an issue, we can eliminate that solenoid and we can move everything down, or we can put just a battery post where the solenoid is and run a battery cable down to the starter and then trigger it with the blue wire from the ignition switch. So it's a simple fix later if it becomes an issue. Right now it's not an issue, so I'm trying not to delve into stuff that I absolutely don't have to. So I'm going to get started on that now before dinner, but I've only got maybe 20 minutes left before I got to go in and feed the pups. So I'll probably catch up with you guys tomorrow. All right, everybody, time for a little update. I have the negative terminal of the battery, whoop, right there, connected, and I have it running down the side of the car, down the 4-inch tube, and then landing on our brand new ground stud right here. I did go ahead and I painted the weld that I put on there yesterday. And then you can see I've got a series of nuts, and what I'm trying to do is separate some of these wires. So I've got the main nut that goes on the stud to give us a good ground, and then I've got the chassis ground from the battery, and then I've got a slim 3/8 nut on there, and then I've got the ground that goes from the chassis to the block, and then I believe this is the MSD box, or the ignition box. So I'm going to sneak around to the other side and show you in there and show you where we ended up landing the engine block ground. All right, so there it is. What I had to do is I had to actually strip the paint off of that area where the engine ground was, because it had been painted, and although it was probably picking up ground from the inside of the threaded hole and the nut, I don't like that. So I went ahead, I stripped off the paint, and I got a good solid ground there. And so now that goes down and that attaches to our chassis ground right there. Now I'm going to clean up some of these wires, and I'm going to disconnect the negative side before I start working on the positive side. And then I'll probably end up strapping it along the top of the 4-inch tube to keep it all nice and neat and away from any heat or anything like that. All right, everybody, it's the next day. It's been a struggle. This car has been very trying over the last couple of days. Been working on it over this past weekend, and it fought me. It fought me hard. However, we did get the battery completed. I mean, right now we're waiting on a new battery, and I'm not in a huge rush to get the brand new battery in, and it's probably going to be a day or two before we see it anyways, and I'll go over what battery we're ordering, because after discussing this all with Jim, he's made multiple trips over to the shop over the weekend, and we came to the decision that we're going to buy a higher capacity battery than what we can get locally. I don't know that we had to do it, but long term, I believe it's going to be a better solution. So let me turn the camera around. We'll take a look at what we've got going on here with our mock-up battery, and essentially the finished cables. Again, I'm waiting on parts. I'm waiting on a boot for the end of the positive cable. I don't like putting these in without a boot, and we're reutilizing the cable that was in here when the battery was mounted in the trunk. So that didn't have a boot on it. I don't know why, because every cable that I've gotten from Factory 5 over all these years has always had a boot over the positive cable. So I don't know if you guys have experienced something different, let me know in the comments, but I always seem to get these with a protective boot over the positive cable. But whatever, I ordered a set of them, so they're on their way. I should have them in the next couple of days. So here's what we got. So you can see down in here, we've got our mock-up battery in place. We've got the positive cable on the other side. We've got the negative cable over here. And I'm just trying to contain everything, keep everything away from the pulleys. Because you can see the pulleys on the big block, they extend pretty far out. And the crank pulley on the front is only, I mean, what we've got, maybe 2 inches there. That's another issue. We discussed with Jim, he'd like to pretty up the front of the engine. And so he asked me about, some aftermarket pulleys. And my only caution to him is if they stick out any further than what we have now, we may have some clearance issues with this battery. We're using a few of Mark's parts from Breeze Automotive that have, asterisks next to them, basically saying you can't use them for this. We're using one of his big block lower cooling hose kits, and it says it's not for a Mark IV. But there's a note in there that says using the Factory 5 radiator that has the angled lower outlet. Well, ours is the older AFCO style, so we ordered it, and it looks like it will fit. But now our radiator is in for repair, or actually we're just having it pressure tested right now, just to make sure there are no leaks, because we found a rust stain on it. Anyways, battery box is the same thing. It says not to be used on big blocks, and I think one of those reasons is because of the clearance issues. But I think we're going to be fine, and we're putting the battery as far to the front of the car as we possibly can. So I don't think there's going to be an issue. But if we have to redo it later, we'll have to redo it later. But I think it's going to be fine. So one of the other things that we had to do while putting in this kit from Mark is, and Mark is great, he gives you every part you need. So over on the lower control arm on the passenger side there next to the battery, there's a grease zerk for the control arm, the lower control arm. And Mark gives you a 90-degree fitting, a 90-degree grease zerk to put in there. We did that before we mounted the battery box, which is infinitely easier to do, especially when you're putting one of these battery boxes in after the car's already been built. If you're doing this during the build, it's not as difficult. But with the battery in place, you'd never be able to get that grease zerk out. And right now, our battery's just sitting there. It's just basically holding the place of our brand new battery, which we should be getting here in the next few days. So I'm going to trip myself up on the hydraulic cable for the lift. So what we did is we measured out those cables, both positive and negative. I just showed you what we did for the negative side, getting it attached to our chassis ground. And what I did on the positive is I just cut down the cable that used to come all the way from the trunk to the front of the car. There's a solenoid mounted on the firewall of this car, and so we're just basically going from the battery to that same connection point. And so the cable was like 5 feet you know, longer than we needed. So down here, what I've done is I've taken that cable and I've routed it right along the 4-inch round tube with that negative cable. And let's see, I'll grab a light here and put it down in there. And then you guys can see that I've got a couple of cushion clamps on there. You can see some of the drilling debris from when I drilled and tapped the hole. There was that's where the old ground stud, I guess if you want to call it. It was a bolt that was threaded into the chassis there, was residing. And so I drilled that out for a riv nut, and then I put a threaded insert in there, and then the 2 cushion clamps. And then there's one more cushion clamp that ended up going, let's see, right in the back here. There's a 1-inch down tube that comes from the back of the firewall down to the 4-inch main tube, and I've got another clamp on there. And then this is the cable right here. I've got a little bit of split loom on it just to protect it as it goes down to the 4-inch round tube and then over towards the battery. So we will actually pull this through we will actually pull this back through the cushion clamps to get the boot that we ordered installed on the terminal end at the battery side. So I got a little bit carried away and taped the split loom on. It's not a big deal, it's just a little bit of tape. We'll pull the split loom off, we'll get the boot on, we'll reinstall the split loom, and then that should all be good. So that's what's going on with the battery. Now, what we ended up discussing with Jim was the battery place that we have here locally is great. We've been using them. God, I just bought 2 batteries for the dually, and I've been buying batteries from them since I was 18 years old. You know, when I got my first car, the first car I bought on my own. And anyways, they have, for that group size battery, which is pretty much a tractor battery. This Group 51, they have good, better, and best. Their good battery is a offshore import, and then the next 2 batteries, I think it's the same battery. I think the only difference between them is the warranty. The better battery, and then the best battery. And so, like, for the better battery, you get a 3-year warranty. For the best battery, you get a 5-year warranty. And then for that good battery, it's a 1-year warranty. That's it. So anything goes wrong with it after the 1 year, and you're kind of screwed. But and then obviously there's a difference in cold cranking amps and reserve capacity and all that stuff between the batteries. But since we're doing this for a big block engine, Jim and I discussed, what were our other alternatives. And so I just went on the interweb and I started looking around for Group 51 batteries. And sure enough, Optima sells one, but I think they only sell one as a yellow top. And I'm not a big fan of Optima batteries. I actually have one here if someone wants it. And then there was one from Excess Power. I did not look for Odyssey. I'll bet you Odyssey has one in that same size. The difference is the Excess Power battery had a much higher cranking amp than any of the standard lead acid batteries that I researched. So I think that's the one we're going to go with. I think Jim's going to order that one up, and hopefully we'll have that in a couple of days. There's a couple of downsides to ordering one of the Excess Power batteries now. They no longer include the SAE battery posts for the top. You have to buy those separately. So that's another $13 that you're going to have to add in to the cost of the battery. So I think the battery was like $320 plus $12. So now you're talking, $332. So it adds up really quickly. Excess Power has been great for me. I have one of their batteries in Slytherin, and when I was researching the battery for there, because I had a specific size that I needed, not capacity, although that did play a part in it, but actual physical size that I needed to fit that battery into the rear fender, well that I had created in Slytherin, and we've actually done a couple of those since. And they always answered the phone. They always answered my question, and they didn't seem like they were put off by having some moron out there asking them all these questions. And they got the sale because they were willing to go that extra effort in order to answer all my questions when I was researching that. Some of the other battery manufacturers, I couldn't even get them to pick up the phone. It was, dial 2 for Spanish and do you know your party's extension and stuff like that. And it gets really old for an old hot rod guy. Sometimes all I want to do is call, ask my questions, and get off the phone. I don't want to go into the merry-go-round of punching little buttons on my phone. Rant completed. But so customer service is something that I found with Excess Power, and like I said, they picked up the phone, they answered my questions. It's not an advertisement for them, this has just been my experience. So we're going with that battery, and hopefully we'll have it in the next couple of days, and in one of the following videos I'll kind of update you guys on, we got it in and it's working and all that kind of stuff. But for right now, I think I'm going to close out this one on the battery. Only one thing I wanted to include is that Mark also includes a hold down for the battery. So this hold down is what he includes, and that's going to mount to the battery in a manner such as this. So this will go towards the top where I'm holding it is the engine side, and then this is going to be the bottom of the battery box itself, and that's what's going to hold that battery in place. And it's a real well thought out system. And then he gives you a lot of the cables that you need in order to get everything grounded. The only thing that you have to reutilize is your positive cable that Factory 5 provides you. All right, that's going to do it for today. I think we're making good progress on Jim's car. The issues that we're dealing with, we're going to continue to just fight through. But some of this is just to be expected when you're following someone else that didn't quite make it to the finish line. These are the things you're going to run into. So if you purchase one of these cars that someone has partially completed, just know you're going to you should expect some of these issues as you're finishing up the car. If you guys are enjoying the content, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that good stuff. Comment, and we'll see you guys all next time. Have a great day.